On this episode of Motorsport Recently, we look back at the Rolex 24 at Daytona, the Bathurst 12-hour and the Santiago Eprix. We're also going over all the other news from this week in racing. We have Caitlin Penny and the wonderful Chris Whitfield and myself on the mic. This is Triple Crown Racing. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Motorsport Recently. Now in podcast form. The wonderful Chris Whitfield here tried to start up a JDM dealership. Our producer got swept away in a cyclone and was most likely run over by a motorcycle. Motorsport Recently for 2019 is back and it's bigger than ever. So today we have Chris Whitfield.
Hello there. Sorry. Hello.
And we have Caitlin Penny commentary with us all the way from the UK here with us today. Yes.
Hello.
There we go. And we've finally gotten this going after various technical difficulties. Our producer today is at Finnick Arrow on Instagram. The link to his Instagram account will be in the description below, and he will also be cast look pretty good with all of his wonderful graphics and stuff. Now, is there anything else anyone wants to say into?
Not really. Apologizing for the throat thing. Oh, and Jack is dying.
Yes, I'm slightly dying. My body longs for death, but I long for Motorsport Recently because. So, and the good news is I've called in sick to work today, so that means we've got plenty of time to record this. So this could go for 6 hours if you wanted to.
I prefer for it not to, if that's okay.
All right then. Okay. So, without further ado, let's jump straight into the news then. So, we're starting today with. And of course, we are looking back at the Rolex 24, which has been and gone, and it's of course our first segment today, and we'll be looking back at all the action from this great race. The Rolex 24 at Daytona really started back in early January, with the Raw before the 24. Now we won't go over the Raw because we've already done that in our Rolex 24 pre-race show. Link in the description below. So the weekend started out with practice and qualifying, and the grid looked quite interesting, as you'll know if you heard me reading it out in the pre-race show. Again, link in the description below. Yes. In the DPI class, number 77 Mazda team Yost car qualified on pole, driven by Timo Bernhard, Oliver Jarvis, Rene Rast, and Tristan Nunez. In second was the number 7 Penske Acura of Ricky Taylor, Elio Castroneves, and Alexander Rossi. And in third was the 6th sister car of Juan Pablo Montoya, Dane Cameron, and Simon Pagenaud. In LMP2, it was the 81 Dragon Speed car of James Allen, Henrik Hedman, Ben Hanley, and Nico Lapierre on the pole. In second, it was the 52 PR Mathiasen Motorsport car of Gabriel Aubry, Mark Crame, yes. Enzo Gubert and Matthew McMurray. And in third, it was the 18 Dragon Speed car of Roberto Gonzalez, Sebastian Saavedra, Ryan Cullen, and of course, Pastor Maldonado. Just keep that in mind for later. In GTLM, the number 911 Porsche of Nick Tandy, Frederick Makovecki, Patrick Pile qualified on pole, followed by the 3 Corvette of Antonio Garcia, Jan Magnussen, and Mike Rockenfeller, and the 67 Ford of Ryan Briscoe, Richard Westbrook, and his pink fluffy slippers, of course, and literally everyone's favourite New Zealander, Scott Dixon. In GTD, the number 13 Via Italia Racing Ferrari of absolutely no one you would ever have heard of qualified on pole, followed by the 33 Riley Mercedes of Ben Keating, Jerome Blakemolen, Lucas Stoltz, and Felipe Fraga, and the 86 Acura, of course, which was the championship contender in GTD last year, of Trent Heinemann, Justin Marks, AJ Allmendinger, and Super Mario Farnbacher. And as Chris has typed here, it's a me, Mario.
I should have removed that.
No, leave it there. It's perfectly fine.
It's in the podcast now.
It is now. It is. Hooray! So, and I've been waiting a little while to say this, in fact, actually since last year, the stage was set for an awesome race. The race got underway, and the number 77 Mazda led the field away with close competition from the Penske Acuras and the Cadillacs. There was competition all throughout the field, along with various GTLM cars having problems, such as the 67 Ford going behind the wall early on, and the 24 BMW from Rahal Letterman Lanigan having problems when they were changing drivers with Alex Zanardi when the crew dropped the car whilst they were changing the steering wheel. So that's the special steering wheel that Alex Zanardi has, and that's caused quite a few issues, and they had to change over the wheel, and it was a bit of a disaster. Anyway, the ones to watch were the Penske Acuras, the Mazdas, and the Wayne Taylor Racing Cadillac, with all eyes of course, Fernando Alonso and his wonderful Kamoa hats. The competition was tight at the front, but then disaster for Mazda happened, which really we should have expected. The number 55 car had to go behind the wall, and the number 77 Mazda caught fire with what has been described as a gasoline supply issue. I will say this race was mainly a prototype race, by which I mean most of the racing was going on in the prototype class, but there was definitely some cool racing in the other classes, i.e. GT Le Mans, as always, because it's GT Le Mans, and it's naturally good. The main talking point was the weather, which caused various incidents, including a particularly nasty one on the tri-oval involving the number 46 Lamborghini and the number 9 Lumberjack Porsche, all the way from Chrisland, i.e., otherwise known as Canada, as well as various other cars. This was after the race had already been red flagged once, and it was around now that everyone's race started to fall apart, with problems for the number 6 Penske Acura putting it out of the race, and the leading cars in GTLM coming together, that being the number 66 Ford being driven at the time by Joey Hand, and the number 911 car of Frederick Makovecki taking them out of contention. The race came down to the number 10 Wayne Taylor Racing Cadillac of Fernando Alonso and the number 31 Wheeling Cadillac of Felipe Nasr. It was a thrilling battle between the two, but it all came to an end when Nasr made a mistake in turn 1 in the wet, giving the place to Fernando Alonso. The race was red flagged and called off shortly afterwards. The Rolex 24 had come to its conclusion, and the end results looked like this. Wayne Taylor Racing took victory in the DPI category with Fernando Alonso, Jordan Taylor, Renger van der Zande, and Kamui Kobayashi driving that car after fighting the best from Acura, Mazda, and Cadillac. Now, that they put on a great performance, and obviously this car was a talking point, and to see it win, I think for a lot of people that would have meant a lot.
Yes, it certainly did, and it showed actually Alonso's prowess and willingness to drive pretty much anything he can get behind the wheel of. And that was definitely a sentence that I just said. It made no sense coming out.
But the thing is, though, I will say this, though. Fernando Alonso was not the only one driving that car.
Yes.
Seemingly, social media seems to think so. But I will say this. Autosport, yes. But I will say this. Fernando Alonso drove, quite frankly, brilliantly. And I don't think anyone can deny that.
Yeah, well, that's not really a surprise. It's Fernando Alonso, and that is absolutely expected. Although, what you were going to say, of course, is that you can't take away from the efforts of Renger van der Zande, Jordan Taylor, and Kamui Kobayashi, who also drove fantastic jobs in that car.
Yeah.
You have to remember, the Cadillac was not the fastest car in terms of pure outright speed. It was maybe in the wet, but in the dry, the Mazdas and the Acuras proved in qualifying that they could very much beat them. It was very much just the consistency, which doesn't come from one driver, it comes from all four of them. It was very much the consistency and the lack of problems for the Cadillac, rather. And actually, now that I've said that, you should also absolutely point out the Wayne Taylor Racing team, who had maybe even a bigger part to play in that than the drivers, and Cadillac themselves as well. So yeah, it's a real team effort in endurance racing, and well, Fernando did drive really, really well, especially in the wet. You know, at times he was about 3 seconds faster than some of his teammates and rivals. Yeah, it's still Wayne Racing as a whole who came out on top.
Anyway, moving on to LMP2, and this will be quite a surprise to most of you, but the one, the only, the majestic, the marvellous Pastor Maldonado alongside Sebastian Saavedra, Ricardo, you put there, Crash, Chris, I don't think that's fair play to him, Gonzalez, and Ryan Cullen won for Dragon Speed in the number 18 car, which is actually a Dragon Speed's entry into the WEC. So now we can say that Pastor Maldonado has won the same amount of Rolex 24s that Fernando Alonso has.
Yes, very much so. I find that interesting, actually, because before the race, we all predicted that Dragon Speed would take the win, but we predicted the other Dragon Speed car. And, well, I very nearly predicted that one as well, so I should have just trusted what I said first, what I said first in the prediction show, but it is what it is, and that team, Dragon Speed with Maldonado and his co-drivers, Saavedra, and who was the other one?
Ryan Cullen.
Yes.
Ryan Cullen, there you go. Yeah, fantastic job, and they've won the LMP2 class, which is actually a new class for this race.
I think that they're still definitely finding their feet with the LMP2 class. It is quite a small class, but let's hope that we will see more people in there, and that the competition will be tight, which I'm glad it will be.
And to that point, also, the fact is that, believe it or not, Pastor Maldonado, we all expected him to have multiple crashes. I think we all did. Memories of Formula One can attest. But he actually kept the car clean throughout the race, and
I think
actually, Caitlin, I think I predicted the 18 would win.
Actually, no, but I think Formula One is not. It can't possibly be for every single racing driver. Perhaps Pastor Maldonado, he didn't do particularly well in Formula One, but perhaps he has found his feet in sports car racing.
The thing with Formula One is it's very, very different to endurance racing in terms of its attitude. In endurance racing, you know that you're going to be getting past, you know that you're going to be passing people, you know that it's an extremely long race, and you're extra conscious not to damage the car. I mean, you should be in Formula One as well, seeing as the car costs like £10 billion, 10 million more like, but anyway, £10 million plus, and it's a massive event, the world's watching you, and it means a lot to a lot of people. So you could say it's the same with Formula One, but from a driver's point of view, it really isn't. It's a much shorter race, and they know they have to go for it in Formula One. That's why Maldonado didn't really pay much attention, because he was so concentrated on driving quickly that he didn't concentrate on what else he was doing. In terms of endurance racing, I've seen this so many times. Some drivers come in and people say, "Oh yeah, they're going to bin it on the first lap," and they don't. They can drive hours on end with no such incidents. I've seen that with people I know in person. It just happens sometimes, and yeah, that may well mean that Maldonado is much more suited to to endurance racing than to Formula One.
Like
Anyway.
Lance Stroll also was a perfect example just last year. Like we all thought that after he binned the car 2 years ago in the like the Chip Ganassi Daytona prototype, after he binned it on his first lap, he was going to do the same thing during the race. He didn't do it in either one of his starts at Daytona.
Anyway, I think we should move on to GTLM, and of course the winner of this class was the number 25 Rahal Lanigan BMW, taking the lead after the class leaders came together. This is not the 24 car which Alex Zanardi was driving. However, we will say though, it is an astounding achievement that they participated in this race. They came here, they were quick. They might not be on the podium, but if I had voted on the hashtag Spirit of the Race award, it definitely would have gone to the 24 BMW. So yes, that was incredible that car finished, a massive achievement. But the 25 car, that was the winning car. This car was of course driven by Colton Herter, Augusto Farfus, Connor De Filippi, and Philip Eng. Now, I almost just want to talk about the 24 car, because it's just the most incredible thing that they've come to Daytona. Actually, it's just fantastic that BMW did manage to get a car to win, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's the M8's third victory in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, because they won at VIR and
they won somewhere else.
Yes. Was it actually Petit Le Mans?
No, Porsche won there.
I had a feeling it was Petit Le Mans. Okay.
It wasn't
Or
Petit Le Mans.
actually, it could have been WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca.
Yeah.
Yes,
I'll
they
look it
did. Yes, no, they did win at Laguna Seca, so they won
Okay.
it. Yes, I definitely remember that. But so the 25 car won, massive achievement for them. But I'd say, if we could have two winners, I'd say definitely the 24 car. That's definitely deserving of a win in of itself. Anyway, I think we should move on to GTD. And in that class, the number 11 Lamborghini from Grasser Racing took victory for the second year in a row after coming back from issues earlier on. Now, I think... sorry, this car was driven by Mirko Bortolotti, Christian Engelhardt, Rick Breukers, I'd say.
Breukers.
Yeah, Breukers.
Breukers, yes, and...
Rolf Ination.
Yes, there you go. Now, how did they do that? I remember, like, I saw them having issues early on in the race. I thought, oh, well, that's them not coming back from that. How can they possibly come back from this? And then they just somehow did. Does any...
I
Well, it
always
is a
knew that.
24-hour race.
It is,
Yeah,
but,
I always knew that Lamborghini had it in them, because the Lamborghini is consistently one of the fastest, if not the fastest, GT3 car that there is, and you know, with a lineup like, you know, a Nikon, Breukers, and that bunch, you know, they are extremely quick drivers. I've met some of them personally as well. They're great people, but yeah. It's a really professional team, GRT. Effectively, a Lamborghini factory team, although not quite. The trouble is, in the past, the Lamborghinis have never quite managed to do 24 hours. That's why they haven't won.
Year. They did last year.
They hadn't won a major endurance race until last year's 24 Hours of Daytona. Lamborghini at all, you know, not just the Huracan, but Lamborghini as a brand hadn't won a major endurance.
That's definitely a car it just did incredibly. Like they definitely didn't give up, because they managed to make their way back to the front.
Yeah, what were its issues?
It had some sort of penalty. It had a penalty, I think, and it had to do... It was quite a severe penalty. It was either a penalty or the car had problems. But then it managed to come back. It was like all the way down the order, and then somehow it's managed to come back. And then it did.
Well, the good thing about penalties is that although it costs you a lot of time, it's better than a car problem in the way that the car still runs just as well after the penalty. Whereas if you have some kind of damage or even a car problem that gets completely mended, sometimes the car isn't quite as it was before.
Yes.
And yeah, so you can often gain back more time if it was a penalty than if it was an incident.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's another Rolex 24 over. I'd say that was an incredible race. I was a little disappointed that it was red flagged for the last hour because, as Chris will know, I got up at 5:30 in the morning to watch the end of it.
I believe there were probably about 4 hours of red flag in total, plus another probably 4 hours of full course yellow. It was a really disappointing end, and actually the last couple of hours, as they were trying to restart it over and over again, and they just kept on spinning and crashing, were some of the most tense and scary hours of racing I've ever seen in my life. And to be honest, I have no idea why they tried to restart the race in those conditions.
But undeniably, they did make the right choice to stop the race.
I was just about to say that, actually. It was,
to be honest, they probably should have done it earlier. Yeah, I think they probably should have done it earlier because the cars were obviously not going to be able to restart.
That would have changed the course of the race because that would have meant the 31 Whelan car of Felipe Nasr and the rest of the drivers on that lineup would have won the race.
Yeah, quite possibly. But the difference is that the cars were absolutely aquaplaning in those conditions, and I don't think we got 4 laps of green flag racing at all. In the last 8 hours of the race. So
8 hours might be stretching it, but okay. Yes,
I'd say maybe 6 at least. But whatever the case, it shows that the cars were absolutely not fit to run in those conditions. And although I can understand why you'd want to keep the race running, they just simply... a lot of damage was caused unnecessarily, in my opinion.
Anyway,
this was actually, as far as the conditions go, this actually may have been the worst conditions for a Rolex 24 since the 2004 race, in which they had to red flag the race at like 7 a.m. For about 3 hours to basically, because the ride height of the Daytona prototypes at that point meant that the water would actually seep into the would actually go into the radiators.
Anyway, I think we should be moving on now. So that was a great that was a fantastic Rolex 24. But a week later, quite a few of the drivers and quite a few of the people involved with that particular race
31
were down under. They were down under, and of course on Mount Panorama for the Bathurst 12 hours. Now, I believe, Chris, you will be taking this story. Take it away.
Oh boy. Well, what can I say, really? It was, from the moment the teams unloaded on Tuesday to the finish of the race on Sunday, the Bathurst 12-hour was just chaotic. It had everything a race fan can ask for.
It certainly did.
Now, of course, it also had a bit of a personal thing for this channel.
Yes, it did.
And Jack can tell us about it.
Yes, so during practice 5, now let me get my notes open because, oh, come on, you can do this. There we go. During practice 5, on the Radio Le Mans broadcast, not on any other broadcast because the audio was having issues. On the Radio Le Mans broadcast, so you'll have to go to the website to see this, during practice 5, at 47 minutes and 56 seconds into that particular broadcast, John Hindhaugh read out my tweet. And
Yay!
He said the 3 words, Triple Crown Racing.
Triple Crown Racing. Jolly good.
And that made me feel quite nice. But anyway...
Hey, Jack, Yeah, not to flex on you or anything, but I've met him twice and shaken his hand, so...
Give it time. I'll meet him someday.
Okay, okay.
Give it time. Give it time. Anyway, let's.
He's a jolly nice man, let me tell you.
He is.
All right. Anyway, let's press on then, shall we?
Okay, so there was a little bit of controversy even during qualifying, as Jake Dennis's R Motorsport Aston Martin, number 62.
Clunk.
Clunk is right.
Yeah.
Suffered a pit lane speeding penalty during the, I believe it was the first qualifying session, which he wound up going out and setting the quickest time to get himself the 10th seed in the top 10 shootout. But I digress, because we'll get into that.
Yeah, I believe that was also a car that picked up some damage, which is why I said clunk. Sorry, I thought you were going to tell that story.
That was that was actually the 760. The
right. Sorry,
the owner car.
Just me mixing
With,
up my Aston
Matthew
Martin.
Perry driving. He clunked the wall going into just past the grate going into McPhillamy Park.
In fact, there were a couple of cars who unfortunately picked up too much damage to actually start the race. In practice, in fact. There was a fantastic story that I heard about one car that went off. I believe it driven by Tim Pappas. And this is really interesting. I've never heard of this before. Went off very heavily at the chase in one of the practice sessions. I'm not entirely sure which one. Unfortunately, it was a very... Okay, yeah, it was a very big accident. He went in backwards. There was flame on the back of the car, and he was lightly injured. I think broken hand or something along those lines. Don't take my word for that, but whatever the case, he was struggling to get out of the car. It was on fire, and the marshals apparently weren't really doing much. So what ended up happening was a spectator down there at the chase ended up grabbing a fire extinguisher, leaping over the fence, and saving Tim Pappas. And I've never heard of that happening anywhere else. And there is now a debate as to whether he was brave or foolish. And I think it was a mix of both. But well done to him.
You saved a life.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was one of those situations that basically you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. Like, honestly, if they had it to do over again, like if I was the one that had the fire extinguisher, I'd go out there on the live track, no question.
You just want to go on a racetrack.
No, well. No, I'd like to drive a race car, but that's neither here nor there. But
when a car catches fire, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how quickly it's going to spread. It all depends on what it ignites, and if it gets into the wrong part of the car, you could end up with some pretty nasty explosions. So
nah, it's not. It's
not
ever good.
It's never good. Luckily, fire safety has got a lot better in racing cars these days. They don't tend to explode or catch fire that readily. And I'd hesitate to say that this guy saved.
I'm not sure you want to know, do you?
Of course not. No, that's the thing. But
fire.
Absolutely, yeah. And I commend that. He is a brave spectator, and that's true Aussie passion there.
Anyway, I think we should move on to qualifying now, shouldn't we?
Go ahead.
Yes, we should. Okay, so the top 10 shootout took place the day before the Bathurst 12-hour, like it does every single year. And the second car out, the car number 999, the Group M Mercedes, driven by Rafael Marciello, set a blistering lap of 2:02.934.
Wow.
However, he was only the second car to go out, so he had to wait for the other 8 drivers to go out. In comes Jake Dennis, who we mentioned before. Now, he knew he wasn't going to start on pole for the shootout. He knew he wasn't going to start on pole because of the penalty.
But
But he wound up setting an absolutely bonsai time. So many superlatives.
Yes.
A lap of the gods type lap of a 202.494, giving him the Alan Simonson Trophy. Or wait!
Yeah.
That was until I'm building tension here.
Oh, very
You're
good.
doing it well. Go ahead.
Around midnight in Australia, in the Aston Martin's rev chip, the rev limiter chip, which meant that his third qualifying position suddenly turned into a 12th qualifying position, and his Alan Simonson Trophy was given to Marciello. Although, credit to him, that was still a pretty good lap.
That's very quick.
Yeah, you know, even if you have the machinery to do it, you still have to actually do it, and that takes so much gut around Bathurst. So yeah, Dennis did a fantastic job, as did Marciello. You know, rules are there, so I believe that Marciello deserved it. But whatever the case, you know, it's gutting for Dennis because it's not exactly his fault that the car was outside of homologation, and you know, to lose an Alan Simonson Trophy after such a great performance is pretty gutting. And yeah, that now explains to me why the Aston wasn't starting at the front of the grid, because I was under the impression that it would be. I didn't actually know about the penalty.
Anyway, moving on to Class B.
Class B, the pole sitter in that class, of course, was the Grove Racing Porsche. Well, because it's an all Porsche class, of course.
Yep.
So it would be a Porsche. I'd be concerned if it wasn't.
Porsche.
I'd be concerned if it wasn't.
Yeah.
And the Porsche Cup Car Trophy goes to Audi.
I mean, it's under the VHE rules, so yeah.
Right. So that's 206.452 for the Grove Racing Porsche.
Class C, which was basically a clamshell spaceship kit car affair, for the most part, along with one BMW and one Ginetta.
I don't think KTM's are... Well... Are KTM's really kit cars? I don't think so.
Not really. They sort of look like some. You know, the KTM is a homologated GT4 car. It's mainly just a track day special, so it's
so anyway,
sort of.
Basically, these KTM, basically the KTM GT4 cars, they are just regular KTM's, but with a pedal pre style canopy over the top of them.
Yep.
Which we will hopefully we will talk about pedal pre one of these days on this show.
Ah, certainly.
Should we do Class I?
Class I. Now, by the way, the pole sitter for that was Matthias Besch in the number 71 KTM M Motorsport KTM Crossbow GT4, easy for me to say, at a 217.072. Now, Class I was the All-Star entry for the Mark Cars Australia team, which in the invitational class was basically all Mark cars, with two fake Mustangs and two Foci.
Foci.
Fake Mustangs? Is that unkind?
Two Mark Mustangs. With the two Mark Mustang silhouette shells with supercar V8s in them. Now, the pole sitter for that class was Anton De Pasquale. Now, there was a bit of controversy in that particular class as well. For you see, they have a minimum lap time that they have to set.
Yes.
Mr. De Pasquale did a lap, I believe, of a 2:04.2, and which was good enough to get himself into the top 10 shootout. But that was a bit naughty.
It's disallowed.
And he also got a pit lane speeding penalty.
God.
I mean,
It's kind of
to do with
De
the track lap time,
alcanzar la
I don't
maceta.
think you get an actually serious penalty until you do it in the race, for example.
No.
So, if you can do it, then why not? So long as you have another lap time that gives you, that gives you that grid position. It's just, it's just funny to see cars going several seconds faster than they should be going.
Yes.
Yes.
Anyway,
It was a bit naughty.
Anyway, I think we should move on to the race now.
Yes, indeed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this was a race of attrition, to be sure.
Bathurst, in a word.
Absolutely, absolutely. I counted, I believe 19 cars did not finish of the 38 that started. I'm looking actually at the spotter guide and all the red X's that I put, thanks to my red pen of doom. Now, the distance record before was what, 297 laps?
Something like that, yes. I'd say so.
Well, that was kind of no longer is the record.
No.
Yes.
Most certainly not.
How far did we get?
I believe it was 310 laps.
Nice. Oh, that's really good. And Bathurst isn't a short track either, so that's a really decent number of laps there.
Yes.
You could run two 1000s in that particular distance.
Yeah. Yeah, you could.
Yes.
Now, the thing that interests me is, you say it was a race of attrition, and it was, it's Bathurst, of course it was.
Yeah.
It was also the cleanest Bathurst 12 hours that I can remember. I've watched the last 4 or 5, and in all of them, we've had, safety car after safety car seemingly all of the time. This time, we got an hour of racing before the first safety car. Over an hour of racing before the first safety car. And that was, 20 minutes at night, several minutes at dusk as well, and still, or dawn rather, not dusk, and still, no safety car. They behaved themselves really well. There was a KTM that went for a little bit of a spin, but apart from that, everything was fine and dandy. And later on in the race as well, yeah, there were a couple of incidents, as there always are at Bathurst, but it wasn't exactly carnage.
No. Anyway, I think we should move on, because what was absolutely stunning about this race is the amount of manufacturers that would compete, and the amount of high-profile drivers from Australia and around the world that were competing for the top spot in Class A. And, well, pretty much any class, really. I mean, but if you look at Class A in particular, you had various Mercedes, the 2 Bentleys, the Porsches. So many people were competing for that top spot, and anyone could have won it, if just a couple of things hadn't gone. Oh, you even had Aston Martin in there as well. It was just unbelievable, and obviously quite a few of those people had problems as well. You had the Bentleys with their pit lane speed limiter issue, but but if that hadn't happened, they could have won the race.
Oh, easily. Like, they had some of the fastest lap pace of anyone in that last stint, and had that safety car not come out for blowing its engine,
Yeah, it could have gone
They
either
would
way.
have actually. They would have been would have been forced to finish what was it, 7th or 8th on the last car on the lead lap.
Oh yeah, and don't forget Nissan as well. You also had the 888 car, which was of course a Merc in there, but they weren't actually. Quite a lot of people thought, oh, they're going to dominate the race, but then they didn't.
Yeah.
Now we should definitely move on. So there were a lot, and then the last safety car, it sparked an incredible run to the end, and the final battle was pretty much between the 912 El Bamba Motorsport Porsche and the number 62
Hang
Aston
on, we
Martin.
should rewind it a little bit further back, because before that full course yellow, there was a bit of, shall we say, argy-bargy between Chaz Mostert and Matt Campbell.
I believe that was just afterwards, actually, wasn't it? Or was that before it? Oh, it was just before the safety car. Yeah, the incident had already happened, so the KTM had already stopped. And I believe in response to that, partially, the Porsche driver knew that he had to go for it. Was it Bamber in the car at the time?
No,
It was Matt Campbell.
Matt
Yeah.
Campbell.
Of course it was, yeah, Matt Campbell. He knew full well that he had to go for it then, because he knew that there was going to be a safety car, and he wanted that track position for the restart. So he went for it. He got up the inside, little bit of contact. As you say, there was a little bit of contact there. In my opinion, it was side-to-side contact. I'd call that very much just racing contact. It wasn't like he came from unnecessarily far back. He did have the room. To be honest, if I was his opponent there, if I was Mostert, I'd have tried to give him more room than that, because yeah, he was coming through, and there was nothing that was going to stop him then. So, in my opinion, great move, nicely executed.
Anyway, I think we should definitely move on to the past now.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And Jack, you can take this one.
Alright, so just checking. Who was it Jake Dennis in the 62 Aston Martin?
It was
at the
Jake
car?
Dennis, yes.
Now this is a pass that I am considering to be possibly the best overtake in racing history. So it came down to the last couple of laps between the Aston Martin and the El Bamba Motorsport Porsche, and Campbell was all over the back of Jake Dennis. This could have gone either way. The Porsche and the Aston Martin were fast in different areas of the track, and we're all on the edge of our seat. And then, almost out of nowhere, Campbell pulls to the inside of Jake Dennis, going into Forest Elbow, pulling off a sort of an almost Takumi Fujiwara style overtake, taking the tightest possible line and going through on the inside. And he managed to pull away from Jake Dennis afterwards and managed to take victory.
First of all, the fact that you used an initial D reference, naughty.
He's doing
Basically, all I can say is naughty.
Wait, Chris, are you up to the part in Initial D where he does the gutter run?
Which episode is that?
It's further on. Well, what episode are you up to?
I'm still on episode 2.
Okay, then you're nowhere near it then.
You can't jump.
Anyway, so that was
we've lost our audience in Japan.
Yes, we have. But
Sorry, Japan.
We will say though, there was a bit of controversy with the 912 Porsche because it was under investigation for possibly slightly running the BMW of Chaz Mostert off the road. But
I say nonsense. Yeah.
Anyway, but
They honestly made the right call.
Yes.
They made the right call to have no further action, because I looked at it later on. It was basically just your standard run-of-the-mill racing incident, and
Yes.
yeah, it was just fantastic to watch.
So-
It really was. And Bathurst, I swear to God, delivers every single year.
Yes. Anyway, so the race came to a close, and the top 5 in A class was what, Chris, with your lovely color-coded script that we have here?
Yes, I color-coded the document, by the way, that we used to write this. The top 5 were, and overall, of course, were the 912 of Dirk Werner, Dennis Olsen, and Matt Campbell in the Earl Bamber Motorsport Porsche. Then there was the number 62 of Jake Dennis, Matthew Vassiviere, and Marvin Kirchhofer in the number 62 Aston Martin. Then the 999 of Raffaele Marciello, Matsi Buch, and Matsi Gutz. The 888 Vodafone Team 888 Aston Martin, Mercedes-Benz. Words of former winners Craig Lowndes, Jamie Whincup, and Shane Van Gisbergen, and rounding out the 5 was the BMW Team Schnitzer BMW M6 of Chaz Mostert, Augusto Farfus, and Martin Tomczyk, racing in honor of the great Charlie Lamb, who passed away the day before the Rolex 24. In fact,
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, in Pro-Am.
in Pro-Am, it was the number 51 of Pedro Lamy, Matthias Lauda, and Paul Dalla who
Had quite a few incidents in practice and qualifying, but managed to hold this together in a race.
and he wound up they wound up repairing the car and winning the AM class by, I believe, a lap over the number 98.
It was actually 2 laps, I think.
2 laps over the Aussie driver search car of Todd Hazelwood.
Now, can we talk
Roger
about
Lago
Todd
and David Ross.
Can we talk about Todd Hazelwood for a second? Obviously, I've met Todd Hazelwood, so that's a racing driver that you haven't met, Caitlin. Anyway,
Yes,
so Todd Hazelwood, I worked this out after the race, and his podium in the Bathurst 12-hour in the Pro-Am class is his first podium in a series that wouldn't be considered either a feeder or grassroots series. Because he hasn't got one. He won Super 2, but that's a feeder series. So, and he didn't get a podium or anything in the 2018 Virgin Australia Supercars series. So his podium at the Bathurst 12 Hours is his first in a top flight motorsport.
Well done, Todd Hazelwood.
Yes.
Yes,
Very
sir.
good. And of course, I've met him.
Hey, have you had a letter from Mark Blundell? I have.
Okay.
I've got his visor signed. Sorry.
Excellent.
Right, anyway, moving on to Class C. Or was it Class B? No.
This, the Grove Porsche of
Grove and Barker.
of the father and son, Stephen and Brenton Grove, and a Porsche and some Porsche factory. Not Bob Barker, of course.
Oh, God.
It was a very quick driver in
Class I, which surprisingly wasn't actually won by Paul Tracy.
Actually, we forgot Class C.
Did we? Oh, yes, of course we did. Sorry.
Class C was actually the only one of the Mark cars to finish the race. Out of the 4-car field, the Interceptor was the only one of those to finish.
Well, as they say, in order to finish first you have to finish. And I believe that draws our Bathurst 12-hour report for this year to a conclusion. And what a fantastic race it was! And I cannot wait for. I
call it the best Bathurst 12 hours in my memory.
That might be one of the best races I've ever seen. Period. Anyway, Good job with your first story, Chris. Anyway, moving on to everyone's favourite electric racing series, Formula E.
Really? My favourite's Scale Electrics.
Isn't that what this is?
Anyway, so another thrilling race has been and gone. Well, when I say thrilling, intense is one way to describe this hectic race. However, there are actually two ways to describe it, and the other one is really boring.
Tell us how you really feel.
For once, I disagree. Yeah, for once, I disagree.
Many drivers did not finish the race, some of which were unexpected. So basically, a typical Santiago Eprix, because it is quite a tight track. Lucas de Grassi...
And they actually, this was a revised layout, in fact.
Yes, and there are still as many crashes as there always has been. Lucas de Grassi took the pole, only to have it stripped away from him for wearing the wrong underwear, probably. No, I'm kidding. It was actually for something far more stupid, because he used the brakes more on his in-lap than his flying lap, so he was stripped of his pole and relegated to the back of the grid. Now, this may be the most ridiculous grid penalty I have ever seen.
Why is that a rule?
Well, I don't know.
Apart from the underwear rule, this one shouldn't even be a rule. Like,
why?
Well, the thing is,
okay,
though,
if
they like
a series that relies on regenerative braking.
Yeah, if I'm thinking about this logically, yeah, you have the regenerative braking. I think it's probably somehow they detect glitches. Like, for example, maybe they think he used his brakes more than it showed, or I have no idea why that is a rule. I'm so sorry.
It's
rubbish.
I'm sorry. Rubbish. No, that's something we can all get behind. That's a stupid grid penalty. But anyway, I digress. So the top three in qualifying ended up being Sebastian Buemi, Pascal Wehrlein, and Daniel Abt. Which, if I'm not mistaken, that's Pascal Wehrlein's best qualifying result in Formula E.
Well, it would be, yes.
Yes.
It's only his second E-prix.
Yes. The race did actually have a high attrition rate with only 14 drivers actually finishing the race. First across the line and take home the win was Sam Bird, proving once again I'm a prophet, because Finnick Arrow's little game that he plays on Instagram, which he's actually our producer for this, but won't be talking because he's in a hurricane. This proves once again that I'm a prophet, because I guessed the results correct for 2 races in a row.
Oh, well done.
And this was before qualifying or anything, and I'm very proud of myself. Yeah, so I guess the winner for the second consecutive race. Follow him on Instagram for all his lovely graphic designs and also that little game he plays. Sam Bird now has 9 wins in Formula E after the race in Santiago. In second was Pascal Wehrlein, who was disappointed by the results. Despite having attack mode in the remaining 5 minutes of the race, he was unable to catch Bird. Now, I'm not sure why you would be disappointed for finishing on the podium in your second race, but okay.
Because it was second place, and drivers hate second place.
And
they
also,
think if I'd just done something slightly more, it would have been first, and first is, a victory. But yeah,
so Pascal. His red shell didn't work.
Yes.
This is not Mario Kart. Track and tyre temperatures meant he couldn't push for that win as he would have hoped, which does sound like a line straight out of the book of racing drivers' excuses, if you ask me.
Actually, the track was breaking up. Everyone was reporting this. I've watched some of the team radios and the onboard footages and things like that from after the race as well. Yeah, the track was breaking up really, really badly towards the end. And to an extent which I haven't actually seen in a Formula E race before. So they did genuinely have a point. But I tell you what, Jean-Eric Verne was absolutely whinging his backside off. Like, oh golly.
When is he never?
So he had an incident. Earlier in the Yeah, he had an incident earlier in the race where a couple of cars bunched up and he ended up getting turned around. He blamed initially Antonio Felix da Costa, and he was going on about da Costa like 10 laps later. I think he did have some slight damage on his car.
Why does this sound familiar? Why does this sound familiar? Why does it sound like Fernando Alonso complaining about Jolyon Palmer?
It also sounds very much like Sebastian Buemi complaining about Antonio Felix da Costa too. But whatever the case, it wasn't even da Costa's fault. When you look at the replay, da Costa was pitched into the back of Verne by Verne's own teammate Lotterer. So that probably made for quite an awkward finding after the race. Yeah. But whatever the case, Verne was one of the unexpected retirements when he was forced to retire, partially due to just getting a little bit hot-headed and probably making the damage worse. Also, partially because of the damage picked up in that little incident. So he was one of the surprise retirements, but yeah, the track was genuinely breaking up.
Anyway, crossing the line in third was Alexander Sims, but due to a time penalty confirmed at the end of the race, it was actually Daniel Abt who took third place.
Meaning this is the second time that he has been gifted a third place during this particular weekend.
Do you know what? So Sims was given a penalty as a result of an incident with Mortara. Looking back at that incident, I don't know if they even made contact. Like, it looks very much like they did. They got very close in the corner, and then Mortara went for a spin. Looking at the onboard footage, it looks as if Mortara lost it on the curb or on a bump or something, and it just looked ever so much like Sims hit him. I'm not sure that he did. But whatever the case, yeah, Sims ended up being given for given a penalty, for an incident he may or may not have been involved in. Still, it was a fantastic drive from Sims, and it always is. Like, Sims has driven in 2 E-prix so far. The first one he could have won if he hadn't got involved in that incident with his teammate da Costa, and then the second one as well could have come third place if it hadn't been for that incident he may or may not have been involved in. So Alexander Sims, while he's a very new name to Formula E and not many people within the world of single-seater racing know who he is,
he's definitely prevalent in the sports car world.
Very much so, yeah. I think that he is an up-and-coming talent in Formula E, and I wouldn't be surprised if he goes on to be another Sam Bird, I expect.
Right. Anyway, moving on. Wolves actually claim the races of various drivers. The likes of Felipe doesn't. Oh, I'm going to get grilled for this. Doesn't research things properly. That will be, of course, due to his IndyCar comments. Stoffel may or may not have failed in Formula 1 Van Dorn. Antonio Felix da Costa and Sebastian, you hit me at the start of turn 2, Buemi, all retiring. I'm sorry, I was just trying to be mean there. I actually feel really bad for it now. Buemi, all retiring mostly from hitting the wall at the sharp, tricky chicane. Yeah,
from the lead. Yeah, remember that. He was leading the race at the time, so you have to be gutted for him because it's a very, very gutting thing to crash out at the best of times, let alone when when you're on course for a race win, and he is absolutely going to be kicking himself for it.
Anyway, I feel really bad for being mean now. I thought that might have been a bright idea when I was writing this, but now I actually feel pretty bad for it. Anyway, that's them never coming on this show. We have 10 more E-prix left, and next up being Mexico City. Who doesn't love Mexico? Sam Bird leads the championship by 2 points over Jerome D'Ambrosio on 43 and 41 points respectively, with Antonio Felix da Costa in third with 28 points. So what are your thoughts, and who do you think will win the E-prix in Mexico? Before that, though, to sum up, heaps of people crashed, Sam Bird won, and there really isn't anything to report on other than that from this race. So as Formula E races go, this one wasn't particularly entertaining in my opinion. P.S. Sorry, Freya, for slightly changing the article and bending it to our own needs. Freya, of course, helping us write this particular article. I may have edited it quite a lot, because hers was actually quite kind actually. I've just decided to make it quite mean.
Yeah, you were savage today.
Anyway,
Tell us how you really feel.
Anyway, the top three, which again Chris is color coded, was Sam Bird. So top three again was Sam Bird from DS Virgin, Pascal Wehrlein from Mahindra, and Daniel Apps from Audi Sport at Schaeffler. Now, moving on, Chris, would you like to introduce this segment?
Oh no. It's time now for our first weekly feature of that we have titled Miscellaneous Stories and Points That We've Missed and Therefore Are Covering It Now, TM.
If you can make a jingle for that, we would much appreciate it.
I'll make that my job.
And therefore are covering now, TM.
I'll leave my Gmail in the description below, so you can send us any jingles that you make. Anyway, starting off on this week's segment, Toyota were testing the TS050 at Sebring ahead of how many days is it now? However many days until the Sebring 1000 miles.
It would be in March.
Yes.
So next month.
We'll probably end up doing a pre-race show for that, so stay tuned. Then, of course, I think it was this week, the Grand Prix of Long Beach has a new title sponsor, and that's, of course, being Acura, replacing long-running title sponsor Toyota. So it's cool to see a new name in IndyCar. That would of course not be the only title sponsor change. IndyCar, of course, changing from the Verizon IndyCar series to the NTT IndyCar series, which, as some people have pointed out, they thought it was an Xbox League before they realized it was actually real.
Now, Jack, there was also a further extension of the Toyota story in that they have committed to running the 2019-2020 WEC Super Season.
All right, okay.
With drivers yet to be announced.
Anyway, interesting news that actually broke only a couple of days ago. And this, I actually think this is really good news, and I'm happy that this has happened, is that Brendan Hartley will be joining SMP Racing for the Sebring 1000.
Yes, he will be replacing Jenson Button in the car because of his Super GT commitments. He will be racing at Sebring and I believe Spa as well.
Yeah, so I'm actually happy that Brendan Hartley's managed to find a place. I mean, it was a tough year for him in 2018 at Toro Rosso, and he's obviously in Formula One he wasn't recognised for all of his sports car racing commitments, and no one ever saw that. Of course, sports car fans, they would know how successful Brendan Hartley has been in sports car racing. And it's good to see him back in sports car racing. And I'm actually really pleased about that. And
the fact that he added, the fact that he's coming back to sports car racing at Sebring is actually quite fitting, because
that's poetic.
We actually, in North America, we started to notice Brendan Hartley running in sports car racing in the Daytona prototype that Starworks ran. And he actually was... He pretty much carried that car. He was the fat... That's okay. With dying Jack here. He was actually... He was a very solid driver in Grand Am.
Yeah.
In the old Grand Am series.
Anyway.
Yeah. So you see, unless Brendan Hartley, let's face it, unless Brendan Hartley did something absolutely thrillingly special in Formula One, he was always going to be primarily a sports car driver. So I'm really not surprised to see him going back to sports cars. That was always going to be his next journey. I'd like to see him try IndyCar at some point, because actually, if he hadn't gone to Toro Rosso in 2017, he would have signed for an IndyCar team, and I believe he did sign for an IndyCar team.
Chip
Yeah,
Ganassi Racing.
Yeah.
I see.
He just never actually started an IndyCar race. That's probably something on his horizon. But for now, yeah, good to see him back in sports car racing. And I can imagine him having a very long career there, but not, sadly, in F1.
If I'm not mistaken, though, he's also actually become the sim racing driver, the sim tester for Ferrari. If I'm not mistaken, I think he did. I think I saw that somewhere. Anyway, on to some Formula One news. Haas F1 team have unveiled their new livery.
Oh, it looks great.
Yeah, it does look really good, actually. Looks like the old Lotus cars. People have dubbed it Lotus 2.0, which I quite like.
The old John Player special.
Yes, very good.
And special it is.
Yes, it is. So that was quite a cool looking livery, I thought. I think everyone thinks that as well. And then obviously Mercedes, they have been teasing their new livery, which has stirred up some mixed opinions. Because people have been making all the concepts and like, oh, that looks a bit rubbish. So they posted a camo-esque type livery on their social media pages, saying that silver is so last season, hinting at a radical livery change, possibly. It might end up just being a testing livery. We don't know, but there are quite a lot of mixed opinions. I'm not sure how I feel about it.
Knowing Mercedes, they're just gonna stick to what's been working.
Yeah, probably.
I'm kind of on the fence about it, and I want to do the last story because
this is breaking news.
This was breaking news, yeah. WEC's resident little team that could stroke bonfire by Collis has unfortunately had some issues with the engine supplier Nismo.
Or the other way around.
In that there is an impasse between according to Daily Sports Car here. DSE understands that the engine supply issue prevented the team from undertaking a planned endurance test at Aragon last month. And that continuing dispute means that the Sebring race is now not logistically possible.
Right.
You mean the CLK actually had an engine in the first place?
Very good.
The CLM did have an engine, but
CLM, sorry.
But it was actually better as a brazier.
Yes, very good. Well done.
Although I will say that it is kind of sad because damn it, I hold I basically I still cheer for Bicolis even though they keep letting me down. It's kind of like that little team that you wish would do well, Mazda, but
Big Mate Racing.
Yes.
It's that little team that you hope that would do well, but they keep disappointing you, Mazda. But yeah, that's basically the news of the week. Oh, and also, Nissan has committed to 3 GTRs for the Nürburgring 24 hours.
Lovely. Always good to have Godzilla. Anyway, I think that concludes our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've had the wonderful Chris Whitfield and Caitlin Penny commentary on the mics today. Our fantastic producer, who may or may not have had a few issues today. We'll hopefully see him on the show at some other point. Finnick Arrow on Instagram. I'll put everyone's Instagram, everyone's YouTube, everyone's Twitter in the description below. I've been Jack McKenzie. This has been Motorsport Recently. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.